Hello, hello. Let the live begin. We are back with Reset the Table live for the first time in a few weeks. It's very exciting. We feel really excited about our guest that we're coming back in with, Aurora. She's dope. It's going to be awesome. Aurora James, not only an amazing fashion designer and just creative, but like her imagination is great. I can't wait to get into that with her. Just started this awesome initiative called the 15% Pledge. We're going to get into that. And just feeling really honored to be able to be with you guys again and hopefully have a really great conversation. I am going to... I think our last one was with Priya Parker, and she said to start it off, because I always go through this awkward phase of like trying to figure out what to do while everyone piles in. Start with a question or a prompt or something that everyone can engage with. So we're going to start with one of the questions in here. Has there ever been a moment you wanted to revolt and didn't? Ever been a moment you revolt and didn't? Tell us why. So then I gotta figure out how to pin that. Let's just be honest here. It's my first time doing this, so obviously I don't know how. Pin comment. Okay, perfect. Let's get this set back up in the way that I want. Okay. Boom. Okay. Yes. So I'm going to read a little bit because I want to make sure I get all the details right. But Aurora James founded Brother Velas. I think I'm saying that right. I will ask her. In 2013 with the goal of keeping traditional African design practices and techniques alive while also creating and sustaining artisanal jobs. So instead of just, going big factories or whatever, she does so much work on the ground with the local artists, which is really amazing. The craftsmanship is incredible. Now handmade artisanally across the globe. So Brother Velas created luxury accessories that celebrates cultural histories and timeless design. She also recently created, as I was saying, the 15% pledge that calls on major retailers to commit a minimum of 15% of their shelf space to Black-owned businesses. As of now, I believe Sephora has signed on, and we're going to talk to her more about who she hopes to sign on and some of the people that she called out in her post and how all that's going, and much more. So, without further ado, of course, gotta figure out how to do this again. And find her. I feel like I saw her up at the top. Here we are again, of course. Trying to find the people. Okay, it's in here. I see. There. Okay. Oh, unable to join. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Let me get back in there. Maybe see if she's still in here. Maybe, Aurora, if you're in here, drop a comment so I can see you. Oh, there you are. Got it. Waiting. Stressful time.
Hey!
There you are.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Albeit virtually, but that's basically the way we do everything now. So seems
Um, Absolutely. And I have to tell you, this is my second Instagram live ever in the
really.
history of my life. Yeah. So I'm right there with you in trying to figure out how it works. So,
Yeah, I mean, I've done like literally 100, and every time like, but how does it work really? Like, how is this actually happening?
yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming on. We are thrilled to have you on. Obviously, this is the Reing page. We're so excited. Normally, we do these events live,
Mhm.
and on them, we bring a bunch of people together, have a sort of brunch, break bread, have sort of meaningful conversation, people from all different industries. And then COVID was like, you're not doing that anymore. So we took it to the gram, obviously, as it's where people are taking everything these days. And it seems to be quite
Yeah.
effective, to be honest. I think the gram might be the most effective mode of communication that we've seen in a long time. So
Yeah.
we
It's awesome. And it's super democratic. Like everyone can just hop on, do a thing. You don't have to travel anywhere. You don't have to buy tickets. It's just great. So I'm here for it, even though I love it in person too.
yeah, it's become kind of a saving grace for everyone. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're so happy to have you on. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you're very busy
Yeah.
that you're doing. We like to start these with a sort of moment of grounding.
Okay.
When we do these live, someone else in the company does it because I'm probably the worst one to do it because I'm way too jittery and nervous. But I'm tasked with it when we go live, so I'll do
Yeah.
my best. So yeah, we'll just do a brief moment where we try to ground everyone. Um, we'll start now. If everyone can close your eyes, take a big deep breath and let it out. So your feet on the floor and your palms facing up. I am thankful in this moment to be able to do this and to have this platform. Thinking about the state of the world right now, breathing that all in, breathing that all out for a brief time, getting to try to reimagine how we move forward out of it. What do we want? What matters to us? How can we heal and rebuild? Tear it all down and then rebuild. Deep breath in, breath out. Eyes flicker open.
Mm.
Into it.
Thank you. Thank you. That was really wonderful.
I think, yeah, I'm a little all over the place with them. I'm definitely definitely not the right person to do that, but we try. We try.
No, you are the
Um,
right person to do that. We're all the right person to do that, right?
yeah, it's
So
nice to
important.
take a second every now and then. I feel like like I'm totally down with the idea, and then when I actually have to do it myself, I'm like get a little
Yeah.
about it. But yeah, so how are you doing during this time? That's such a loaded question. I don't even know how to
Yeah.
ask more, but just how
Yeah.
are you feeling? How is it landing on you?
Yeah.
Obviously, business owner who does a lot of business globally.
Yeah.
Um, you have people on the ground who you work with, you travel. That's been very much affected as a Black woman in this society with this much needed, long overdue national uprising. How is that feeling on you? What are your sort of feelings in this moment?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. I'd say I've definitely been like understanding it in two separate parts. Initially, it was the pandemic and sort of unpacking what that felt like in terms of the isolation that was brought on. And then like, you know, people weren't, I make shoes and bags. And like when there's a stay at home order, people aren't like dying to purchase luxury shoes and bags, you know? So from a business perspective, that really took a lot of retooling for me, for sure. And as someone who's also like loves to be around my friends and like is a very physical person, like that also was tough to wrap my head around. And then in the second wave, like with the murder of George Floyd, like that was a whole other, like added a whole other layer to it.
Yeah.
Where now, you know, it was just like the rawest wound that you could sort of imagine. And I think for me, what I've really committed to is like making sure that we use this pain right now to understand where it's coming from, where like deeply in our soul, like where it's coming from, what we need to heal, and then make those asks of other people, and then commit to also those changes within ourselves so that we can start living more of the life that we want to and that feels more authentic and where we can be like truly joyful. You know, like I'm a really genuinely happy person. Like my like default setting is like 8 out of 10. Well, seriously. And I feel like most people live around a 6. I'm like a solid 8, like just genuinely like really stoked most days and really grateful. And I want everyone else to be able to feel that too. And right now, I know we're not feeling that. So what is the work that we all need to do so that we can authentically be at an 8?
Mm-hmm. Something we talk about a lot in our company. I mean, basically the whole reason we started it in our like driving mission is to reimagine the status quo. So you know, you take that into fashion, that might be one thing. You take that into social issues, that might be one thing. Clearly, with the George Floyd, you know, murder and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud, and there's, you know, countless others. It's going to take a considerable amount of, you know, reimagination and really just imagination in what we want. We saw that early on in COVID, and all the reading that I've done about you and everything, all the interviews and everything, you seem to have this deep sense of imagination and creativity. And I think you were able, it seemed to, you know, sort of pivot very quickly in the beginning of COVID with your business. Cause like people are like, I'm good on the shoes. I have 4 pairs of socks that I'm going to wear for the next 3 months. And very quickly with these protests and with the uprising, you've been able to pivot very quickly. Can you talk about that imagination and that sort of intuition you've talked about before, and how that guides you, and like what are almost like the lens with which you look at things through? How do you do that?
It's really that means a lot to me that you honed in on imagination and intuition, because those are my 2 kind of North Stars. I'm an only child, so my imagination was always my sense of entertainment growing up. And I also like had a tough childhood, and so I had to use my imagination to sort of transport me to different places. And I think now whenever I'm in a situation and I'm like, this maybe isn't great, I have to like imagine the future, like what that could look like. And then I think my analytical self is like, okay, what are the steps that we need in order to get there, you know? And I think also, given that I'm a pretty resourceful person, I like to look at what we have as well. And when we talk about, you know, George Floyd and, you know, the 15% pledge and all of that, it was really about like seeing what was happening, you know, getting all of these messages in from different companies, hearing what they were saying, which is like, we stand with you, but then not feeling it. You know, it was like what we did in the beginning of this. It was a grounding exercise, and you're asking yourself, how am I thinking? How am I feeling? And sometimes when you receive messages, be it from strangers, friends, or corporations, you have to say, like, how is this feeling for me? Even if it might be status quo, it doesn't mean that status quo is going to satiate you in certain moments when you have like a deep hunger or an emptiness or a wound. And so then I think in those moments, you have to push yourself, or I have to push myself, and imagine like what life could be differently. what would I have needed in order to, feel better? And imagination definitely comes into it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we think about it in turn, at least I think about this like with the reimagining the status quo. It almost seems redundant to ask you this question because clearly you're doing that, but it's almost like the imagination is so important because especially for Black people in this country, the status quo is white supremacy. So it's like whatever sort of thing we fall back to that's comfortable will reinforce the status quo, which is reinforcing the white supremacist aspects of our society, which is all of our society. I was reading an article. The designer from Pier Moss, Kirby Sharma Moss, he was saying like cool about everyone like wanting to buy Black right now and wanting to buy Black businesses, but like as soon as that trend's over, like people are gonna leave. And so were you thinking about that when you started the 15% pledge? Because that's actually how we change the status quo. People who necessarily going to look to try to buy Black or support Black businesses. If you're going to Sephora and you're just picking your favorite product, you'll probably just get some of that, and then you get more of a representation on the shelf. So can you take us through the process of like why the 15%, how you were thinking about that, and how structurally and like socially that can sort of help create lasting change, the kind that we were on?
For sure. So even just like to backtrack a little bit with Brother Belly's My Business, like I created it with $3,500 at a flea market in Lower East Side of Manhattan. So like, I really have like worked super hard at it. We've now sold millions of dollars worth of product, which is amazing. But like, I really had to do that largely on my own. And so when I was receiving all of these messages that companies were saying they stood with me, etc., as a business owner, like I was like, what does that look like? Like I was feeling that, trying to receive that as a Black woman and also as a Black founder. Yeah. And so, yes, it's great for like for them to make donations, sure. But like, $1 million donation, or, in Target's case, like a $10 million donation is very small in comparison to like what Black people are spending there every single day, which is like a couple $100 million,
Right.
And when we look at a lot of these large retailers, people were like, well, 15%, like, think like how much did a Sephora have before? And it's like most of these retailers are averaging like 2% or below in terms of what they're buying from Black owned businesses. And like that's not okay. And you're right. What you're saying and what Kirby's saying is right. Like right now, it's top of mind for people. Like, okay, we're going to buy Black. But what I'm calling for in the 15% pledge is like a longer term strategy to start investing in these businesses in a meaningful way that they're going to have to work on, and that's going to put billions of dollars back into the Black community. Because a donation is like a drop in the bucket, but an investment is a much longer term thing. Over years and years and years, we're talking about real growth and real numbers. And that's kind of why I created it, was like to hold these businesses accountable. And at the same time, it's not supposed to be about like a call out, canceled culture. It's like, I need you guys to sit down at the table with me that I've created. And this is an open invitation where we can figure out what the systematic issues are that have created this economic injustice and this racial inequality that we've all been living in for so long. And now how can we work together to make sure that this starts changing?
Yeah. What I thought was so dope about the 15% pledge was you basically took what all of these companies are saying. We want to help. And, even just like white people in general, it's like, we want to help. And it's like, no, this is how you're going to help. And it's going to, at the same time, balance things out and create a more equitable environment. At least in the long term, it's going to take a while. But it's also going to kind of call out like the fake, so it's like, or, the small donations or whatever, that actually still reinforces and will long-term reinforce the status quo that's happening right now. And so I wanted to talk about a few of the other companies, and specifically why you called them out in your post originally. One of them is a cannabis company, and I think it's called.
Yeah.
A little Google search is not super flattering to them in a lot. You know, Target is one of them. Can
Yeah.
you talk about why specifically those and how, I mean, I always think a good public shaming never hurt anybody as long as there's
Yeah.
then action into it. Like, I'm going to call you out, but then I'm also going to give you an option or give you kind of a little playbook. Can you talk about like your mind sort of did that and how important that is to start really just keeping businesses and people and companies accountable? Because of course everybody in this moment is like, yeah, Black Lives Matter, we're going to get on this, but like you can kind of smell bullshit right away, and we have before. And so I feel like two things are happening in this moment. It's either that people really are earnestly like, okay, we want to be a part of this and we're willing to do the work, or it's like, oh God, we know we need to say something, but like you can't just get away with saying anything right now. So kind of like talk me through a little bit how you were thinking about that and how this can actually help companies break their status quo and, you know, create a more equitable space for Black and brown people.
Yeah. Well, I really targeted those companies in specific because I wanted to see them do the right thing. And I believed that they would. You know, I believe that they had the capabilities to. I believe that they've done some early work that they'd be able to build off of to get to that 15% as well. With Target specifically too, like so many of those stores are in major cities that have really high population of Black and brown people. So I feel like they have a huge responsibility to Black and brown people to make a meaningful and lasting investment in their communities, you know? I know that they like raise the minimum wage for some of their employees, which is great. But at the same time, again, like we're talking about big long-term investment in businesses. And that's really what I'm asking for. It's the same with the Whole Foods of the world. Like, you know, so many, they're saying 40% of Black-owned businesses are probably going to close because of the pandemic. 40%.
Crazy.
You know, like 95% of Black-owned businesses did not get any money from the first round of stimulus. 95%. Like, that's so many. There's like a clear inequality that's happening there. And for me, when you have these retailers that benefit so much from like a Black workforce, Black consumers, like Black culture, even in a lot of cases too, we're talking about them selling products that are made by people of color, you know, in not ideal situations sometimes as well. It's like you really need to make long-term commitments to Black business because ultimately, like, that financial equality is what's going to make all the difference for Black people being able to also invest back in themselves. And MedMen, you know, cannabis, that's a particularly controversial area. You know, there's over 40,000 people that are still in jail right now from marijuana offenses. And in California, it was deemed an essential service. So it's tough to like pick and choose when pot is okay, and to, you know, be having an industry that's making millions and billions of dollars off of it, but then not working with enough Black people is just really contrarian to me.
I think one of the most important things that people miss a little bit is like we're so reactionary to all of the symptoms of the problem. Like if we talk about Sephora and how, you know, they only have 2% of, you know, Black-owned businesses on their shelves. So even if they address and put 15% on their shelves, it's like they also need to do the sort of work on the back end to support Black businesses and to, you know, provide services and provide pathways and all of that. Can you talk a little? That to me is really the biggest problem, is that we're sort of, you know, throwing money at the problems that flare up or the issues that flare up, but not the actual problem where it stems from. And so I think about this all the time, like, you know, even with like affirmative action, or if we talk about like nepotism in business, like it's only talked about in a negative sense when it's the other. It's never talked about like, this is a normal ass thing that happens. Like if you know someone, you're more likely to like see them as a full person and see not just like, oh, this is a Black owned business. You're just going to
Right.
see the business, or you're going to see the person. So can you talk
Right.
a little back end help and structure so we can slow
Sure.
down a little bit more? So actually, like, yeah, there's 15% on the shelves, but also they're like ownership over those 15, and maybe that grows.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's like a critical part to this, Megan, because there's been honestly so many businesses that have reached out to us that are like, yeah, we're going to take the pledge. Like, we're going to send a bunch of purchase orders now or whatever, right? But for me, and what was so, so, so critical in the conversation with Sephora was talking not just about them, like, okay, writing a check to a bunch of businesses, but actually taking the time to onboard these businesses to Sephora with the same like level of excitement that they would like any other major brand, you know, or like a celebrity brand, like really marketing them properly, really helping them, and then saying like, you know, look, out of the gate, like it's very hard for a small business to be in every single Sephora store nationally, right? So it's like start maybe at 12 and then say, look, what are the barriers to entry to getting national with this? You know, how can we address and support there? What are some of the key issues that happen early on that stop these businesses from being able to get a larger distribution? Maybe it's packaging. So
Mm-hmm.
who do you also know that's going to be able to come in and offer their services to advise for free on packaging? Like, what are the other tools? Who are the VC people that these conversations can happen with? Like, it's not just about writing a check, it's about properly onboarding them. And with Sephora, what we were able to like actually tap into is an accelerator program that they started a number of years ago, and saying like, okay, let's expand this existing program. Let's dial it in specifically to focus on women of color and Black women, and like make sure that they grow. Like when at the 15% pledge, we talk about Black owned businesses, but we also talk about Black future founders.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I want to see, you know, the next Fortune 500 companies coming up through these promises that these businesses made through the 15% pledge. Like, I want to watch them. I want to help them grow. I want to make sure that they get all the resources that are available to them. I want every single person that's been reaching out to be like, what can I do to help? I want to help, to actually give their time, give their services to support along the way, not just right now with a donation, like 1 year, 2 years from now with their actual time and their resources.
Right. And that just that's like a positive cyclical effect. It's like you have
Yeah.
successful Black business owners who are getting experience and onboarding and resources, and then they're going to put that back into, you know, people that look like them and communities that look like them in their communities, just as everybody does. And then we can start to build sort of a more robust, and it's not just like, okay, this one company made it out, and then actually their bandwidth is only such that they can focus on themselves. It has to be part of that larger, sort of supply chain. Isn't really the right word, but it's like that human supply chain of
Right.
IP and craft and community and ideas and like love and all of it. And with your company, Brother Vale, is like, you go to these places and you're like, I'm not just looking for like a cool design that I can take back to people who can afford to buy it. Like, I want you to be part of this process and the craftsmanship and the
Yeah.
artisanal. Can you talk a little bit about your process of design and sort of including everyone in the process, like how you
Yeah.
your sort of design process around that and the sort of global consciousness that you have with that?
Yeah. So I started Brother Valleys with the goal of preserving traditional artisanal skill sets across the world, particularly like in countries in Africa. And it's really about working with different artisan groups and focusing on what they're already doing, what they like to do, what's a part of their culture, whether it's weaving, whether it's carving, whether it's farming, and kind of amplifying that and giving them resources to do it in a larger way, or continue to hire, or even stay in business at all, because a lot of these artisanal jobs have really been dying out over the past 20, 30 years. And so it's what I saw early on in the fashion industry was, it was like a lot of like African inspired things,
Right.
you know, and there was like no
Yeah.
actual participation from any of the people that were actually making these things or doing this beading or doing this carving in real life. It
Right.
was all like inspired by. And I just didn't find that super interesting, you know, or that authentic. Like, I would rather involve the actual person in the process of creating that item. And to me, like, that's real luxury, you know, like working with someone in Kenya who's like like we have one of our bags has this like wooden chain that's hand carved. It's like chain link, right? But it's hand carved from one solid piece of wood.
Oof.
So all of the chains like are fully solid, and it's like a Kenyan hardwood, and someone sits and carves, and it takes them a really long time. And we pay them really well to do it because it takes them a long time, and it means the bag's expensive, but it means the bag's expensive because someone worked on it in a community and like put love in it, and like that was their culture, you know. It's not just expensive because it has a logo on it and like a bunch of people said that logo is supposed to mean something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. I think a lot about, you know, this whole series that we do is called Reset the Table. Ava DuVernay has talked a lot about, you know, fuck the table. Basically, we're building a new table, a lot of table talk all around. And I feel like the most important thing about the idea or the symbolism of the table is its representation. So if we, you know, only have 10% or 20% representation at the table, your product is basically going to be like 20% as good as it could be. Or if you have like, okay, now diversity and inclusion, okay, we'll like throw a gay in there, throw a black in there, and then we're like, okay, we have that covered. But really, it's like you're getting the full story. And so your investment and your, you know, collective creativity with these different, you know, artisans and local people give you the whole story. And it may not, you know, show up on the tag of the bag, and it may be an expensive bag, but there's like something magical in the bag. Like it's
Totally.
in the like it's sort of this sort of like visceral feeling that like this bag is really amazing and it took a long time and I'll probably keep it, you know, for years and years or maybe pass it down. But it's like you
Yeah.
just stamp things out. And I feel like our culture so much is just like, okay, we're supposed to do this, stamp this out, stamp this out. And it lacks the sort of creativity and the imagination and the intuition that you sort of talk about things with. So one of the questions I asked you was about revolt and like when in your life, but it seems like your whole life is a big revolt, and I love that. But in all of these different ways, like, is that your way of sort of revolting against maybe the status quo or society or design or fashion or just what you've kind of seen in your life? And like, how do you think about that in your sort of design process?
I speak a lot in analogies. And one of my friends this morning was like, you know, talking about like how I operate. And she was like, well, you're a little bit like a bull in a china shop. And I was like, I mean, I suppose when I'm entering, I am, right? But then I just sort of like, I am a bull in a china shop. I go like, come in, and I'm like, okay, like, and that, but then I sit down and I'm like very thoughtful and like, you know, meticulous about the work. And I'm like open to sharing it. And it's all like very open source code. Like, hey, I'm in the china shop and I'm like, hey guys, like, do any of you want to see this? Like, I know I made a little bit of a mess, but like, come, yeah, like, come, like, let's look at this. And yes, it's disruptive, but I'm also always coming in peace, truly. But it's like there's this elephant in the room. There's this bull in the room. Like, we can't go back to business as usual. It needs to change. We can't pretend that something isn't happening. And I'm going to stay in the room for sure, and I'm going to keep occupying space. And I think sometimes just being that space and being as authentic as you can be in those rooms and in that china shop and on social media or in an interview or in your own stories or at your dinner table with your family, you know, is the revolt.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about like people feeling like, oh, you know, like, I don't know if I'm doing enough. Like, you know, the 15% pledge started off as an idea that I had and something that I posted on Instagram. It was all of the people on Instagram that rallied around the idea, that spoke up and liked it and shared it and did all that, that like led to Sephora and a bunch of other companies that we're about to see, like, take the pledge. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the people did that. You know, this platform did that. Like, everybody needs to have that accountability over those movements. And it's just about, like, getting out there and vocalizing and being like, yes, this is what I want to see.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
revolt.
that I totally agree. And I think people, until this moment, for, you know, a long time, we've had, you know, different things happen in my lifetime, but this is certainly, you know, the most collective I think we've been. Like, a lot of people want more and want better and like want a different reality than they have. And I think people are being imaginative and creative and following that intuition and following that gut out into the streets, or with the businesses they purchase from, or with the family that they have, or the conversations that they're having. I think people are starting to
I
have those
believe it.
of like, is this really how it should be? I mean, even, you know, before, you know, the tragic murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and so many others, even just with what was happening with COVID, I think people were like, this really is just like not enough. And it's not
Yeah.
really not good enough for anyone. Um,
No.
yeah. And
No. Like,
it's like that idea of, in whatever way in your life you can be most impactful, that's the way that you need to sort of reimagine and trust your gut and trust your intuition with things. And I feel like you're, you know, the perfect example of this. Like, what you do and what you're amazing at, like, is your craft and your imagination and the design, and then working with companies. And now you're in these rooms and you're like, this is how I'm going to use this space. Do you think about it like that? Like, I'm in this room. They let me in this room. I shut the door behind me and I'm like, now I'm going to use this.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, the whole thing is about leading by example, right? Like, showing up and doing the work. Like, I can't tell my peers how to be and how to create product if I'm not also, like, doing that.
Right.
And just to, like, echo on what you're saying, like, we just all are going through like a global pandemic. Like, that's mind blowing. We just lost a lot of really amazing people as well on this planet. And, like, there is no time left for us to live the life that is not the exact life that we want to be living.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And if that means, like, getting out there or protesting or writing someone or calling someone or having the conversation that you're always too afraid to have, like, this is that time when you want to have that. You know, this is now.
It is. It is absolutely this time. It's been time to
It's
be.
been time. It's been time. And now we're like, been in our house stir crazy, like, something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right.
Right.
And it's all like, you know, exploding out of us, like, hopefully in this really beautiful way. Like, I feel like it's like this giant flower eruption, and it's like we have all these gifts to give, and we're
Mm-hmm.
all trying to figure out how to navigate it. And it's like just speaking, just sharing, just talking, just like having those tough conversations, but being committed to, like, empathy in that process
Mm-hmm.
is so, like, you know, magical and powerful. And I always say, like, every single conversation that I go into with someone who has, like, a very, with the willingness to change my mind. You know, like, always be open to having your mind changed. Because if you are not open, you are also a part of the problem. You know, so
Yeah.
you have to always be open. Like, I know foundationally a lot of the things that I know, but, like, I'm always open to learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, get you the idea of new information being presented to you and changing your mind. It's okay. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of not being smart enough or not knowing. Like, we all sort of live in this like pretend world as if everyone has it figured out. Meanwhile, everyone's like, I don't have it figured out. Like, I'm just doing the best that I can. That's just the perfect way to look at it. I feel like I'm taking away from this: trust your gut, trust your intuition, and your creativity and your imagination comes from there. And get in the China shop and get in there, and it's like, sorry, I knocked that vase over. That was like, you know, trash to begin with, but like, we're just gonna put a new vase, and show up. Like, just show up. Is there anything that you want to, like, the very last thing, like, leave all these people with? I'm sure you could leave them with much
Oh my
more.
gosh, just that, like, you know, we are doing this together. We are raising our voices together. We are creating noise together. Every single action counts, you know? When you see something and it resonates with you, like that thing, share that thing, tell your neighbor about that thing, tell your mom about that thing. Like, do all the things, because as little as it seems, you know, like, even for me, when I'm talking to these businesses, they're like, we keep getting tagged in these posts, and like, you know, like, there, that like, people actually like see that and they feel that. So all that is also rebellion. That's all also revolting. That's all also sharing, you know? And that's just it. We're trying to get to 1 million names on this petition for the 15% pledge. I am like so proud of everyone that's been like supporting this movement, and I'm so grateful to you, Megan, for having this conversation with me. And I'm just incredibly excited to talk to you again when we've signed on 5 other companies.
I love that. I know, right? We're gonna have to come back. I love the 15% pledge, because it requires a lot of work from people, but it also, the work is like, you'll just see the results as the work comes in, and it's everything that everyone is saying, where they want to be and where they want to go. And you've given them this amazing sort of template for that, and said, I'll help you. I'm here with you. I'll, you know, be a part of that conversation. And I love that. As we start to step out of COVID, or potentially stepping back in, but everybody needs shoes. Check out her amazing company, Brother, for bags and artisanal things made with heart and soul. Sign on to the pledge. It's just such an, I did it this morning. It's so, follow this woman. As always in this movement, I think we're all realizing the Black women have been saying it all the whole time, at the lead of every movement that we've ever had. We cherish your voice so much, and are so thankful for you to come on here. And yeah, hope we'll be talking very soon with a bunch of other companies who have
We
signed
will.
up. Aurora, James, thank you
We
so much
will.
today. We loved having you on. Good luck with
Thanks,
everything.
Megan.
Stay safe out there.
Bye.
Bye bye.